Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Track here at Continual. I'm your host, Kensing Martin, and tonight we are talking about season 8. We're taking a road trip to all the locations that the boys were supposed to be in when they did their ghost hunting stuff, trying to figure out why those places and what was so special about it and why there. But before we take a deep dive into season 8, let's let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Samantha.
Hello, I'm Samantha Bryant. I write the Menopausal Superheroes series, and compared to these guys, I'm very new to the Supernatural fandom, having only just started really plowing my way through it at the beginning of summer. I'm up to, I think, season 11 now.
Okay, Anna?
New blood, hooray. I'm Anna Kensing. I've watched Supernatural more or less from the beginning. The first early seasons I sort of dipped in and out, but yeah, I've been pretty much there since the beginning and have dabbled in a little bit of fanfic. And season 8 is not one of my most favorite episodes, but I really, really do love Dean and Benny and Purgatory.
Fair enough. Elektra.
I'm Elektra Hammond. I'm a writer and a copy editor, and I have been with Supernatural since that very first episode.
And I'm Gail Martin and Morgan Bryce. I write epic and urban fantasy. All my modern worlds are one. And as Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance. All my modern ones are ones where Sam and Dean could walk in and feel right at home. I fell in love halfway through season 11, binge watched 11 seasons in 4 months to get started with season 12, fell down the rabbit hole and haven't come out for air since. So season 8, we've got Dean back from purgatory. We've got a rift kind of between the brothers, and at least the beginning of the season. And as usual, the boys are all over the place. So who's got locations that particularly struck you as unusual or interesting? And let's start with Anna.
I don't think that we can talk about season 8 without talking about Purgatory as a location. And, we get it mostly in flashbacks from Dean's perspective. Dean and Benny and Castiel fighting all of the monsters in Purgatory. It's sort of, the crew used filters. I don't understand filmmaking, but the crew used various filters to make it have this sort of like grainy kind of grayed out effect. So we always knew that we were in Purgatory. I saw it like not just because of the scary monsters that were attacking Dean and Benny, but just also sort of from the visualness of it. And it's this like filthy, scary, washed out, terrifying place that's filled with monsters. And we get we get quite a lot of it, right? So we start in Purgatory in the very first episode, and we get a lot of it in the flashback. And then we go back to Purgatory towards the end of the season as well, when Sam travels to Purgatory to get into hell to rescue Bobby as part of the trials to close the gates of hell. Guided by Benny and Benny ends up escapes from Purgatory via Dean at the beginning of the season, and then ends up in Purgatory at the end of the season. So, it's a major location, even though it's arguably not real in Supernatural.
Okay. Elektra, how about you?
It's never been a thing. Kermit, Texas. Where Sam spends a year, we see mostly in flashbacks, experiencing life, real life, with a girl and a dog and a blindingly mundane job, where he's just fixing stuff around a beat up old motel, but he's blissfully happy, it seems.
Samantha?
It's just Go on.
Well, I like both of your choices very much. I agree with Anna that what they did with lighting to make you always know you were in purgatory was amazing. It just had this malaise the second you saw it on the screen, and it was just the right feel for purgatory. Sometime we should do a panel looking at how heaven, hell, and purgatory have been portrayed in lots of shows for the contrast. I think that would be fun. And yeah, and Kermit, Texas, that terrible little hotel that they were living in when he went to fix the air conditioning, that was really good. I think my favorite setting across the season is actually that church in the very last episode of the season. And I was so sad when I looked it up and found out that I can't go see it. It's not a real church. They built it for this.
Mhm.
Yeah, because a lot of the places that they use in the show, I actually could take a little road trip, and I could go see some of those places, and some are even places I have seen. But that little church with its I really liked the design of it, the smallness, and the how beat up the outside was, and the almost Gothic detail of the door. Because it's a little country church, so it shouldn't be Gothic, but it still kind of was. It was just exactly the right place. So I guess they went driving around Kansas and couldn't find a church that looked quite like what they wanted, so they made one.
Or Vancouver.
Yeah,
Right,
or
as the case may be, imaginary Kansas. Yeah.
I'm going to come back to Kermit as well, and also your lighting comment, because there is a theory that if you notice the first times we see the whole Amelia stuff, it's very kind of a golden soft focus, and then it becomes regular. And there is a theory that they originally intended the whole Amelia arc to be Sam's hallucination, that none of it was real, and that we were going to find out maybe after they'd fought about it for a while that none of it ever happened. But somewhere, and somebody I know was talking to one of the Serge, the guy behind the camera, and he said things are not always as they seem in this season, and then it changed. So since I'm not an Amelia fan, I'm going to stick with the fact that, and Jared isn't even an Amelia fan, I'm going to stick with the idea that it was intended to be a hallucination, and they changed their mind. And at some point there, Kermit went from being hallucinatory to real, because it shifts from that soft glow, soft focus to normal lighting. And it's like, why? It's not just memory. It's, yeah. So I'm sticking to it. I think the whole Kermit thing was a hallucination. Yeah. So what else? Oh, by the way, I looked up Clayton, Louisiana, because I was kind of interested in that. That's in the very first episode. It's got a population of 700. It does exist, but they are trying to hook into its extremely haunted past and hope to get tourists. So I don't know who had a connection to Clayton or who drove through the little burg, but it's a real place, and apparently it's haunted.
Okay.
So round two, what other locations intrigued you? Elektra?
Normal, Illinois. I mean, first they picked a place that was named Normal. And second, we got a major demon incursion that it changed the boys' lives forever. Even if they didn't realize it, by causing their dad to lose his father and causing the men of letters to go almost extinct, but not quite.
And there really is a Normal, Illinois, unlike neighbor Michigan, which was fictional.
They've come up with some good names, but they find some of them on the map.
Yes.
I can't believe they didn't use Blue Balls, Pennsylvania, but that's another quote. That's a different panel, I think.
Did they use Hell, Michigan?
I don't think so.
There is a town in Michigan called Hell.
Yeah, we
maybe
need to do a panel on all the places they should have used and didn't.
Yeah, well, maybe
Different
they
town.
did too much PTSD to go to Hell, Michigan. What do you think, Samantha? Any others? What else jumped out
I really liked the little Cajun cafe that Benny worked at. It's one of those places that like you drive by and you'd be like, I don't know, should I go in there? Am I asking for food poisoning, or am I getting a really cool local experience if I go in there? And I guess, I have a taste for buildings that are beat up and a little, I guess we could call them well-loved if they're still being used, on the verge of abandoned, and the outside of, was it Guidry's? What was the name of the place? Anybody remember? It kind of looked like a trailer that had been turned into a more permanent building. And then again, it had the white peely paint and all that kind of stuff, but it had a good sign, like a nice lit up sign that said, yes, we are still in here having business. And then once you got inside, it was so warm and friendly. And, I really wanted that to work out for Benny, for him to just get to, be a guy who worked at a cool cafe with some friends for a while. But, he's on the wrong show for that.
This
It was
is
in
true.
Karen Crow, wasn't it?
Was it what?
It was in Karen Crow, Louisiana, wasn't it?
Yes, yes, it was Karen Crow, Louisiana. And it was his, great granddaughter's, father's place, who she takes over
Well,
running.
wasn't that kind of sweet that he actually went and found family,
Yeah,
trying to connect to his once upon a time human life.
yeah.
How about you, Anna? What do you think?
The bunker, a major location here in season 8 in Lebanon, Kansas. And so the bunker shows up in like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 episodes, I think. And apparently there is a map on the wall in the bunker that is marked with every city that Sam and Dean have ever visited. And so Jerry Wannock said that yes, he acknowledges that it doesn't actually make sense for the men of letters to be keeping track of Sam and Dean Winchester's, travels, since they lost Henry Winchester so very many decades ago. But
Maybe they don't know that's what they're tracking.
Maybe they don't know that's what they're tracking. But it was definitely a nod to the fans and to the writers to put that in the bunker. And then the bunker is just such an amazing set and such an amazing place that provides the boys with sort of a home base to operate out of, like they used to have in the Roadhouse, and a home to go back to, and beds to have, and
a dungeon just when you need it.
And a dungeon just when you need it, right?
Right, and your own
you
shooting
have your
range.
memory foam bed that remembers you, and then you can have your dungeon for torturing demons.
And you can nest there. It has everything.
They do.
It really was neat to watch Dean nesting of all characters. He got into it so much, talking about how the room didn't smell funny. I love that part. And I think you were referencing the memory foam. It remembers me.
It remembers him, right?
Yeah.
And the kitchen where he gets to actually make real meals for Sam when Sam's going through the trials. And, it's sort of like he starts off with kind of like the kinds of meals that he would have made on like hotel, motel, hot plates, and then always, burgers, but he branches out into things like lasagna and, even makes the occasional salad for Sam.
I love that you got this sense of vastness with the bunker. It had a shooting range. It had a gym. It had unknown number of storage rooms. Fan fiction has made a lot of storage rooms people just wander into and find things that maybe they should have been a little more careful with. Look at the sign on the door that says cursed objects do not touch, maybe.
The garage.
The garage.
So many cars in it. So many cars. Baby just has to
Dorothy's
park right in
motorbike.
the middle of it.
It was definitely cool to let the boys have something so cool, given that they've lived up till now out of their car, and you never even get the impression they own more than a couple of change of clothes, because the trunk is full of weapons, not additional clothing. And having your own shampoo and all of that kind of stuff. And after everything they put them through in the seasons leading up to this one, that felt like such a nice respite. And I appreciated that they that after going through all of that, they got something really good. Because I'm jealous. I want a bunker.
Right?
Yeah.
That telescope that they never actually look into, like look through, like dudes, like you're not just like hanging out at that telescope looking through it, the telescope that's always in the background, like that's a
Well, and apparently we find out in season 15 with Mrs. Butters that it doesn't look at the stars, it looks at other dimensions.
I just don't understand how that exists in a place where you're living and you don't play with it. Like I don't understand that.
Well,
I
I
would've-
guess it would have been a very different season if they just stayed there exploring their new home.
But I loved all the new things we found out. We didn't find out about the bunker until Mrs. Butters came in season 15, that the table lit up and it pinpointed vampires. And, you know, I would have loved to explore more of those things early on, but at least they did get to keep the bunker for 7 seasons, which the Roadhouse, you know, they barely got a chance to show. So they did get to have a home all the way through the end of the show.
Yes.
Yeah, but all the super cool stuff they did with the bunker required them to basically enslave Mrs. Butters. That
This was
was the superpower, was her.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, they were a little more ethical than the other men of letters, and decided that she deserved a life too.
Right. Although at the beginning, they didn't even know she was there. They didn't know that if you hit that reset button, anything would ever happen. So, but yes, they did let her go at the end, and that was the right thing to do. But man, the bunker was cool.
And it didn't take Dean very long to find the Men of Letters vintage porn collection.
No. No, what can you expect? But Sam, with all those books and the files and the spells and, you know, so much good stuff, and apparently the almost limitless amount of ingredients for things. Need a little eye of newt, toe of frog? Hey, we got it.
In a storehouse
Well,
room.
and it
that's
was
not been
well
opened for-
cataloged.
Mhm.
Yes.
I still
Sam's
think,
already adding books to the catalog.
yeah, in my head canon, they took what they could salvage from Bobby's house, and they took what they could get from that other chapter house with the Cthulhu demon. And any place they found a dead hunter, they liberated the books and added to the stash, because who better to keep and catalog than the Winchesters? So yeah, I'd love to just have them come back and do a whole HGTV exploring the bunker.
Yes.
Hunter TV. All right. You know, I was surprised that they went back to St. Louis, Missouri in Man's Best Friend with Benefits, because that hasn't been a good luck town for them. I know they talked about getting some of that wiped out and all that, but man, I think that would be tempting fate.
The bar though was really sweet.
Yes.
Right? Very high class, very luxurious, very like the kind of place that you just want to have a nice, expensive cocktail in while you're, you know, speculating about what Portia does with James.
And while,
but you know, the boys have never been necessarily wise about where they're going and whether it's a good idea to go there if there's somebody that they feel they owe a favor or that they are close to in some way. And so, you know, they ended up back in St. Louis because they got a call for help from somebody who mattered, you know.
this is true. This is true. Who else has got a location? That was
Warsaw, Missouri,
where
where Kevin was on a boat called the Fizzy's Folly. I mean, bonus points for the name of the boat. But the fact that he was just getting more and more paranoid on that boat, and, you know, setting up booby traps for people coming in.
Yeah, that location is also on my list too. So that's Garth's houseboat that he donates to Kevin's, security and need for a place to hide from Crowley. And so we end up there in, I think, 4 episodes. If you include episode 21, where Crowley has created it as an illusion because Crowley has kidnapped Kevin and is,
Doing
creating
bad
a
things.
solution so that he will figure out how to translate the tablet and give Crowley what he wants to know. But yeah, I do love the houseboat, and that it's Garth's houseboat. And so
Yes.
that's why it's called Fizzle's Folly, because we have Mr. Fizzles, the sock puppet. Remember?
Garth
I
has amazing depth.
Yes. I was surprised to see Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, as one of the towns. If you've ever driven through Wilkes-Barre, which I have many times, it's not the most memorable town. It's seen better days. But when I looked it up, it turns out that Wilkes-Barre has an amazing number of potentially haunted houses per capita.
Hmm.
Who knew?
Who knew?
I mean, it's part of that whole coal belt, rust belt in Pennsylvania that the glory days are long behind it. So a lot of those towns have abandoned mines and abandoned factories and abandoned houses and mansions for the people who owned the mines and the factories that are now falling slowly into decay. So they've definitely got a Gothic vibe to them. But most number of haunted houses per capita, I was impressed. So sounds like a job for the Winchester.
Yeah. Way to go.
Yeah. Who's got another one?
Whitefish, Montana,
Yep.
which
Okay.
I'd never heard of until there were problems in Puerto Rico, and suddenly Whitefish, Montana was in the news. So it's not a big place, but it's a real place. Our
And
former Secretary of the Interior is from there.
Oh, huh. And we've been here before because it's Rufus's cabin, right? So we spent a fair bit of time in Rufus's cabin in Whitefish in season 7 as well. So, like kind of carrying forward from the previous season, the location that the boys spend time in when they need to recover and recuperate and decide what to do next. So yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of neat to use that as the start point for where we got the boys back together at the beginning of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Where you can chill and have a beer.
Yeah. Well, and it's really a haven for like real life big game hunters, isn't it? Isn't hunting and fishing one of the big attractions in that area? That
There's not
So-
a lot else to do in Montana other than like ranching.
Yeah. So it makes sense that Rufus would have his cabin there and it would be relatively remote, and that anybody who did come upon it wasn't probably of a mind to go investigate, because deer hunters and fishermen don't really put their noses in other people's business. You got a cabin? Fine, it's your business.
Yep.
So it does sound like a place.
I did kind of appreciate the some of the kind of echoes between Bobby's house and Rufus's cabin, because they were contentious friends, but they were friends, and there's a similar feel to both places with being homey but not at all fancy, not a place where it's ever going to be a big deal that you spilled your beer, but where there's going to be some place to keep your beer cold. You're not just squatting. And there's just I don't know, maybe it's something in the way they film it, or I'd have to go back and compare like the actual sets, but when we were in Rufus's cabin, it felt a lot like Bobby's house to me.
Yeah.
This is also the season where Biggerson's becomes Castiel is running from the other angels, and he uses Biggerson's as a place to hide because they're all the same.
I loved
Mhm.
that part. That was so much fun that you could hide because they couldn't tell which Biggerson's he was in.
And if you've done a lot of highway travel with chain restaurants. That is, Waffle House.
Cracker
Which
Barrel.
Waffle House are you in? How could you tell? Um,
Yeah, Cracker Barrels are so much
Turkeys.
alike. You know which way to turn to go to the bathroom when you've never been in that one before.
and you know exactly which kind of candy they sell that is hard to get anywhere else. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
This is a good thing when you travel. If you
Yeah.
want to be able to get a dependable meal
Mhm.
and you know the menu and you're tired, and you don't have to read the menu. You can just say, I'm in a restaurant I know, and this is what I usually get, and I will get it.
And while it may not be spectacular, you're not going to get sick from it, minus the turducken.
Well,
Always
but only
skip
when the
the
Leviathans
turducken.
are like, farming humans to eat later.
Yeah, very true. Now, we also had the episode LARP and the Real Girl took place in Farmingham, Michigan, so to speak, which has its share of haunted houses, haunted mansions, haunted places. But we also had the fairy realm, Avalon, with Charlie's love interest. And that was a lot of fun, not only to see the LARPing, the Renaissance Festival aspect of that, and we got to see Dean and Sam kind of get their Braveheart on, but to see this whole different side of Charlie, who of course goes off and hides as the Queen of Moondor.
Right. And, that park in Farmington Hills, which is a real town, it's not really Farmington Hills that weekend, it's really Moondor. And so that has its own sections and factions. And, this part is, I was going to go back and look at that episode because there's a whole thing about how this playground is not a playground, it's something else. And I just ran out of time to go to map out all of the different parts of Moondor, but I really, really enjoyed that episode.
The other thing that they didn't really come out and say one way or the other, but I almost got the impression that this was not a temporary LARPing site, like, the Renaissance Festival comes and it's open for 6 weeks and that goes away. And I almost got the impression this was a kind of permanent site for this LARPing group that sort of maybe blurred a little bit of the line between, is this LARP or is this real life? Which reminded me of a book series Jim and Joyce Levine wrote about a Renaissance festival that was year round at the old military base in Myrtle Beach. And some of the characters, since they never got out of character, took the whole thing a little seriously, since they never broke character.
They took the thing a bit seriously, and I've read that series as well.
Mhm.
But I mean, there are groups of reenactors who go out to Pennsylvania every year,
Mhm.
and it's pretty built up out there too. But they bring things you would not believe to go stay out there for 2 to 3 weeks.
Mhm.
But it's not there all the time. They have lives.
Mhm.
But they do stuff in other places at other times. I don't think it was a permanent. That didn't look too permanent. That looked like tents.
Okay.
Tents go down. I've seen people that tow caravans, structures to go camp in for 2 weeks. It's insane what people will do.
Well, if you've ever driven past the Penzig Wars at Cooper's Lake just in Pennsylvania off I-79, it's a very large Society for Creative Anachronism event. It was always a joke that the loser got Pittsburgh. But it's massive. The tents go on for as far as the eye can see, and there are battlements and walls, and this kingdom arises for several weeks and then vanishes.
Well, nowadays it's 2 to 3 weeks. When I was in college, it was most of a week. And I used to go, for the better part of a decade. That was my summer vacation, I went to the war. I spent Tropical Storm Daniel there. That's why I'm speaking with some authority on this.
Yeah.
I reenacted decades ago.
I agree with you, Gail. I think that in Farmington Hills, I think that Moon Door, yes, there are tents and yes, it's temporary, but I think that those tents go up every single weekend, right? I think that they go up and they go down, but I think they do that all the time. And I think they might do it most of the year. Like that's the same sense that I got too, that particular group of LARPers are very, very, very into Moon Door, and they have to share that park with civilians and muggles and whatever, but they do their very best to maintain it as Moon Door.
They really did do a beautiful
Also-
job with that moment of when you're not a LARPer and you walk into the group of LARPers and they stay in character and try to incorporate you. So when Sam and Dean show up and they just they want to tell them you've got the wrong weekend. We're not doing anachronistic stuff right now. We're staying here, but they're trying to do that without breaking character. And I very much enjoyed that. That's happened to me several times at conventions when I've wandered through the LARPing section looking for something that was not LARPing.
It's not the time travelers weekend, guys.
Yes, yeah, you're here on the wrong weekend.
The other thing that might preclude it is that they did set this in Michigan, and camping in the winter when it gets cold is less fun than camping in the summer.
Yeah, you had to be pretty hardcore.
Yeah, but
But
when you're in Michigan, you become kind of hardcore. Like I spent several years when I was in elementary school living in Michigan, and I did things in the winter in Michigan that I haven't done since, because you're just hardcore when you live in Michigan or Maine or places that are generally cold most of the year, or you just don't have any fun.
I've become such a wimp. I used to live in Alaska, and I finally, after all these years and in North Carolina last winter, I zipped my jacket because I was actually cold.
Whoa.
I've become
blood-
such a wimp.
Blood thins, yeah. I love the notation on the Bitten episode, unknown college campus. In other words, the architecture all looks alike. Let's just pick a college somewhere.
it could be anywhere. It could be in your town.
Yeah, their little shared apartment that looked like it might be in the basement of something. Was very much like apartments I spent some time in when I was a college student. They got that vibe very, very well.
Yeah, there was a definite universality to that location where, And it is true that so much college architecture is that college Gothic look that, could be anywhere. So I just loved the notation here that was just unnamed college. We also had
Where they are.
Hmm?
Sometimes they don't tell us where they are. There
This
are
is
no
true.
hints.
Well, and this season also got some mentions of at least a few places a little further afield. They mentioned, well, Avalon, obviously, with the fairies, and Atlantis in As Time Goes By. And we get a mention of Greece and Olympia, and Remember the Titans, and Mesopotamia in Goodbye Strangers, and Vitsibissk, Belarus. So, the guys don't go very far afield most of the time, but at least they mention some places that, hey, we're not in Kansas anymore.
Right. We spent a fair bit of time this season in heaven as well, right?
Well, and
when Castiel is being controlled by Naomi, we spend 4 or 5 episodes like in heaven. in Naomi's office in the weird white hallways of heaven.
Right. Doesn't heaven in this one look like it was designed by like 1990s Apple?
Yeah. Or a dentist's office. Well,
Yeah.
Oh, definitely a dentist's office.
Mhm.
Also, we need to mention that, you know, the way out of purgatory takes you into the 100-mile wilderness in Maine.
yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
It always drops you there unless you get in through AJ's little secret back door.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, the 100-mile wilderness in Maine, which is like it's the second to last segment of the Appalachian Trail,
Mhm.
to the, end of it in Maine. And so, and yeah, it's pretty wildernessy. It's pretty wildernessy. So
Well,
it's-
that way nobody notices it.
Mhm.
right.
You know,
Nobody's gonna notice.
going back to heaven, I remember feeling really struck by how bureaucratic and officey heaven was, which, you know, if I'm writing heaven, of course, this is heaven for the angels, not heaven for the deceased, because you get your own personal heaven as a deceased human. But, you know, all that bureaucracy sounds a lot more like hell to me. Like when Crowley took over and hell became nothing but an endless line. You stand in line to find out you've got to get in another line, to find out you've got to get in another line. Like,
The
yes,
thing that
I think that actually is hell.
the thing that really struck me about the angels in heaven, though, was if you were in corporate America in the 90s, there was a lot of pressure to wear these power suits that, especially for women, were very neutered.
Flattering.
You know, God forbid you show that you have any curves or any bumps. You've got to have these power suits that kind of with a little knotted rosette that was sort of like a man's tie, but not. And every time I see Naomi and the angels in those awful gray suits, I have this PTSD flashback to early days in corporate with those suits, those awful suits.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's just interesting kind of philosophically, like, you know, what that says about the angels, that, you know, you kind of feel like either that experience of what it looks like in the angels part of heaven was crafted for them, or they craft it for themselves. But either way, that's, you know, that's what we think they need. And it's so cold and so painfully bright and so completely businessy. And it's perfect for the way that most angels, you know, like not Castiel, but other angels are. And it also, I think, feeds the whole story as to why they're all so broken.
It's so featureless and devoid of any personality. And yes,
And if I had to work under those lights, I might snap too.
Yeah.
yeah, white might be symbolic of purity or something, but it's also just Spartan and soulless. For being heaven, it's soulless, which I guess the angels are, but still, hell had a much better interior designer.
Yes. Yes.
Well, they
Yeah,
were
it's
they
really-
were showing angels as being all followers who were leaderless, and they just didn't know how to take initiative. And if you don't know how to take initiative, you end up with a white cube. And everything is always the same.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
it was only the angels that came down to earth and were exposed to us who started to develop personalities and feelings and better design ethics or better design feelings. You know, so you ended up with label whores, and you ended up with Castiel, who had all the feels, you know, and there were all sorts of fun things, you know.
Yeah, I guess
great
Metatron
angels.
had enough exposure to us to kind of design himself a den with, you know, lots of books and an old-fashioned typewriter and all of that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And Joe became a label whore. She just
Mhm.
wanted all of the good clothes and the jewelry and, you know, and the shoes.
Mhm. And Chuck designed himself a very cozy bar. You know, he had a lovely bar. It didn't have anybody in it, but it was a lovely bar that looked like it would be great to hang out in. So
That
he wasn't,
no one wanted to work in. He
well,
made it a little, he was a rough employer, but yeah, it was kind of nice.
well, there was
Drinks
the
looked
bar.
good.
There was the bar where he met Metatron. And then there was the casino where he killed everybody at the end. So I was thinking more of the bar where he meets Metatron. That was not
Huh.
the White Soulless either. So Chuck at least had some personality. But you're right,
Well,
Joe.
yeah, I mean, Chuck
Joe was
created
like
everything.
Yeah,
He wasn't an angel. He had all the things.
it's true. You know, the other location that shows up a lot and doesn't show up is going back to Lebanon, Kansas. Usually when it says Lebanon, it means the bunker. But we got to see glimpses of more of Lebanon than the bunker in a number of the Jack episodes and the episode Lebanon, where the boys actually ventured out to a bar or a liquor store or a restaurant or, my gosh, there were shops and a park and teenagers, annoying teenagers, but still other people actually lived there. Which I thought was interesting that we didn't get to see the town. I would have loved to have seen more about how the Campbell brothers interacted with the civilians in town and maintained that, you know, how come you guys never order pizza?
Oh, come on, you know that Dean orders pizza. I mean,
Yeah. But we can't have it delivered to our secret lair under a bridge.
Sure. So in this season we can't, right? Because
Right.
you know, like the bunker's new and it's a big secret and it hasn't been open for decades and whatever. But you know, I think that they kind of relax a little bit about it after season 8, right? So by the time we get to, you know, the later seasons, then yeah, you know, they do have to venture out to get beer and provisions and order pizza. And so, but yeah, but in season 8, when we see Lebanon, we're pretty much mostly in the bunker, but it's new and it's, you know, there's plenty to explore in the bunker first.
It's true.
When they have a bunch of other people staying there with them, they're much more relaxed about ordering the pizza.
And we're also much more willing to leave the bunker too and go someplace else because there's all these people staying there.
House guests can make you want to go out.
Any other headcanon about the Winchesters getting to know Lebanon, Kansas? I mean, they've never had a home base other than Sioux Falls, and everybody already had a predetermined opinion about Bobby Singer in Sioux Falls.
Well,
I think
somewhere in my head, I'm convinced that they actually find a real supermarket and they don't buy everything in that convenience store. Because
Agreed.
even if they have a magic credit card, it's just, you know, there's a better selection and you can get more things to put on your burger.
Agreed. And Dean knows the names of all the checkout folks and Sam knows the names of none of them.
Yeah.
My head
Well,
is
and
about that.
you're not going to get good produce in a convenience store. And so Sam has to have his salads and his smoothies. So there
Yes.
must be a better grocery store.
But then,
Or-
you know,
or a
like,
farmer's market.
At some point, Dean is like, oh, you know, like Trixie at the supermarket. And Sam's like, who? And he's like, you know, Trixie with the bleach blonde hair and who wears the, you know, like chains. Like, what do you... And he's like, oh, yeah, right. That's her name. That's my headcanon, is that Dean knows the names of the folks who work at the grocery store and Sam doesn't. He recognizes when Dean describes them, he recognizes them. He's like, oh, yeah, I've seen that person before. But he never bothers to learn their names. But Dean does.
I like
Only
that very
if they're
much, especially since Sammy's supposed to be the soft one. Like when they need to soften somebody up, Sammy's the one who talks to them because he's better at meeting people and seeming open. But, you know, so far as who's going to really get to know you and really be in your corner, it's Dean. Yeah.
Any other places jump out to you? We've found a lot of cool stuff in season 8.
How about the video game that they get kind of trapped in through Charlie's dream, and the one with the gin? Pac-Man Fever was the name of the episode. I really liked how it was made out of so many video games that I've seen or played. And I was like, oh, I think I may have played this one. And what fun for the actors to get to do something like that.
And Dean in a bandolier. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
It'd have
Yeah.
just a thigh rig too. Many of us would have just died happy right there.
Well, and 2, we get Topeka, Kansas, which apparently is where Charlie's from originally. And we put her original life to rest, where she says goodbye to her mom and reads her The Hobbit one last time.
Which was an episode that just got you in the feels. And Charlie's the kind of person you can envision leaving a place like Topeka, Kansas, but it's interesting to think that she started there because she's obviously left a lot of Kansas behind her. You can take the girl out of Kansas, but sometimes you can't take Kansas out of the girl.
Well, and just the backstory they ended up giving her of somebody who had had a tragedy and kept sending money back to take care of her mom was just, it makes it more understanding of why she felt she wanted to take care of the guys.
Well, and I don't
'Cause that's
remember
just
where
what she
Charlie was
does.
when they met her, which, you know, because they didn't meet her in this season. But it's interesting to me that it feels like they met someplace bigger, like, you know, in a big city someplace, but they turn out to both be from small places in Kansas. I mean, Topeka's big by Kansas standards, but nothing in Kansas is actually big.
All right, well, folks, believe it or not, we have once again managed to fill our time. So before we leave, let's let everybody say where we can find you online, starting with Elektra.
Elektra Hammond, you can find everything you need to know at untilmidnight.com.
Anna.
You can find me at my website, annakensing.com, and on TikTok at Anna Kensing Books.
Very good. Samantha.
And you can find me under my name too, SamanthaBryant.com. Or if you Google Samantha Bryant, put in author, because if you don't, you're going to get an actress. And I don't really do ball gowns like she does.
Understandable. I'm pretty easy to find at gailzmartin.com and morganbryce.com. If you spell them right, you'll find me and not other people. And all the social media is a variation of those. Of course, you can also find my Supernatural TFWNC group here on Facebook. I write articles for the Winchester Family Business blog, but most of the time you can find me here on Continual. So thank you so much to our wonderful, wonderful panelists. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There'll be more Supernatural coming up soon, so we'll see you online.